Hello everyone, and welcome to the Dept Talks. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The theme today is Web3, the new era of the internet, and we will be exploring everything Web3 has got to offer for brands, with a range of cool speakers who know everything about the topic, of course. First, a little bit about me. My name is May van Ettenkoven, and I'll be your host for today. I'm a senior strategist at Dept here in the Netherlands, and I'm really excited to be here and take you along this journey for the next 2 hours. So why are we here, and why are we organizing this event? At Dept Talks, we tend to talk about topics that we think are important for you, for our clients and partners, so you can stay ahead. And it's not often we can see change coming before it actually happens. Over the past 2 years, we have worked with our clients on several Web3 projects and initiatives. And Web3 really is shaping our industry, and we believe this topic is essential for connecting people in our business, but also for developing brands. Today we'll talk about some of the Web3 projects that we at Dept have worked on, such as Algorand and Merit Circle, but also other metaverse initiatives for brands like H&M. And that's why we have invited some of our friends and partners from the Web3 space to really share their vision and predictions for the industry. But before we start, we want to give you a short overview of what we have been working on. So let's start the show reel. Awesome. I hope you all really enjoyed that. So for all of you who are watching on your Dept desktop, make sure you properly explore it. You can buy the latest Dept apparel drop in the shop. You can also browse some really interesting content in the folder and check out Dept FM, of course. You can subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you receive all information on our really cool events and more. And most importantly, check out the chat. This is where it happens. Chat with other participants, ask questions to our speakers, or share your favorite gifts, whatever you want to do. And we also have an update for you today regarding our program. Unfortunately, Katie and James, she can't make it to the show. But don't worry, we have 2 amazing panels lined up for you. We will also be having a short break in between, so you can explore the desktop, or you can have grab a drink or whatever you want to do. But before we start welcoming our speakers, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Tobias Cummins, Business Development Director here at Dept. Hi Tobias, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Nice, I'm great, I'm excited.
So am I.
About to learn a lot of new information.
I think we're both going to learn quite a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited to be here. Excited to talk about Web3, and of course with our guest speakers, like you mentioned. But before I start, I also have a short clip to share. Let's roll the clip.
Like the internet, mobile technology, and social media, the spatial web, or better known as Web3, is about to take off as the new age for human interaction. Web3 is interesting, meaningful, and immersive. It's becoming a focal point for brands looking to establish a relationship with today's newest generations. Within Web3, the metaverse and NFTs provide unique, one-of-a-kind spaces and ownership for places to meet and interact, digital art and fashion, music performances, and digital collectibles. Providing a decentralized platform for brands and individuals to monetize and engage on a whole new level. In the future, Web3 will open up a world of possibilities, paving the way for real economies and engaging audiences all over the globe.
Hey everyone. I'm Maeve's co-host today. I'm actually in a studio surrounded by NFTs. Well, not really, maybe in the metaverse. Unfortunately, they might not be for sale. I'm going to have to disappoint you on that one. But as Maeve alluded to, it's not often that we're in a position to see fundamental change before it arrives. And I think we can all agree that it feels like incredible momentum is building toward a reorientation from Web 2 to Web 3. For context, according to CNBC, digital possessions grew a staggering 21,000% in 2021. For context, that means that trading spiked from approximately 80 million in 2020 to a staggering 17.6 billion in 2021. Certainly sounds like a catalyst for change, if you ask me. But if you're a pragmatist, like myself, maybe you've asked yourself some of the similar questions I've asked myself. What does it mean to move from a centralized Web 2, where technology giants have been able to dominate large swathes of the internet, to a more decentralized web operated and owned by its users? What does it mean for us in terms of the work that we do for our clients? And what does it mean for us as curators and caretakers of brands? And frankly, how can we use it in a practical way? And that's what we hope to dive into today. Our program is split predominantly into two panels, where we've got some inspirational experts joining us who are incredibly active in the space. Our tech panel later today is titled The Hype, Tech, and What's Beyond, and it'll be hosted by our global SVP of Engineering and my colleague, Jonathan Whiteside. Whereas the first panel is titled What Brands Need to Know to Survive and Win in Web3. And that's where we'll have a broader, more generalist discussion about the space. And I'll actually lead the chat, or I should say, facilitate it, because I myself am bracing for a learning journey, and in much the same way I imagine many of you are as well. In sum, I hope you enjoy, lean in, ask questions, and let's have a brilliant sort of time learning together and discovering what this space is all about. Welcome to Web3, a new kind of internet. So, let's get started. What brands need to know and survive in Web3? I think we've got a great group of speakers. I actually wanted to sort of take a moment to introduce them. Are we on the line? Mike, Paula, Stefania, Tim, are you all there?
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? There you are.
Yep, we can hear you.
Can you see me, hear me? All well, all is well?
Perfect.
Amazing.
As clear as real life.
There you are. All right. I would love, maybe we could just start with some introductions. Mike, do you mind introducing yourself briefly?
Yes. Hello, everyone. So I'm Mike. I'm one of the co-founders of 3Dium, also the CEO, and occasionally wearing my Web3 and Metaverse strategy cap as we take a lot of our brands and agencies into their first ever Metaverse experience. And what 3Dium does is that we have built this end-to-end engine, 3D engine, that allows brands and agencies to digitalize their content at scale, create all sorts of immersive commerce solutions like 3D and AR configurators and product explorers and ads, which they can distribute across e-commerce, digital advertising, and omnichannel. And since last year, we started positioning ourselves by introducing this Metaverse channel that allows the brand to take the products and experiences and distribute them along different Metaverse worlds and NFT marketplaces. And this way, we allow them to navigate across Web 2 and Web 3 seamlessly without having to worry too much about all the technicalities of how to start monetizing and experiencing the Web 3 space.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, it sounds incredibly amazing, Mike. Thank you so much for that. Tim, can you hear and see me as well? Would you mind introducing yourself too?
Loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, my friend.
Excellent. Yeah. My name is Tim Walther. I am group manager for the topics NFT and Metaverse at the Volkswagen Group. So meaning the Volkswagen mothership, basically, of the brands Volkswagen, Audi, Lamborghini, Bentley, Ducati, and some other ones, Skoda, yeah, and so on. I'm always missing one brand, so I'm saying a lot more.
We won't hold it against you, Tim. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Excellent. Yeah. What we're doing in group marketing is basically we're aligning and aligning all brands on this topic. Is a lot of exchange on this topic because we have brands who are pushing in one area, we have other brands pushing in another area, and basically what we're doing is that we make sure that we have all the learnings that we collect in the group available for all partners that we are in the group. So this is one of the major steps, and I think it's especially in such an innovative topic where everything happens really, really quickly, where new partners and new things come up basically every day. Exchange is very, very crucial. And the second part of my job is basically to run big partnerships that are necessarily for several brands that we have. For example, with big partners like tech partners, but also in terms of crypto and so on. So everything that we can do in the back end to make sure that NFT projects are done in a professional manner.
Amazing. Tim, thank you so much for that overview. Really, really interesting stuff. Stefania, I believe that you are there as well. And first of all, am I pronouncing your name correctly? I always like to check that before we continue.
Yes, it's good. Steffi is fine.
Steffi's fine. Okay, we'll go for Steffi then. Nice to meet you, Steffi.
Thank you so much. Nice to meet you. So I'm really glad to be here with such amazing people. So what do I do? I'm the founder of a boutique communication consulting called Cassiopeia Services. I host a YouTube channel, Financial Fox. I'm a trader, NFT collector, and been working as business strategist with different companies in the crypto space. I'm working with Input Output Global as a consultant on bringing the blockchain solution to brands. So that's a very interesting panel, obviously, where we can, we can talk more. And yeah, I'm very excited to dive deep into some exciting topics.
And we're super privileged to have you. Thank you so much. What a great overview. And I think Paula, am I seeing that right? Are you joining us from the beach? Where are you?
I am, yes. Happy Easter, everybody, from Tenerife in Spain.
Amazing.
Yes.
Paula, you joined us. Thanks so much for your time. I would love to, if you could give folks an overview of what you do and some background about yourself, that'd be an amazing thing to start with, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yes. So hi, everybody. I'm Paula. Thanks for joining today. I'm a Web3 brand activation specialist and a retail innovation lecturer at London College of Fashion, Nottingham Trent University, and Technological University Dublin. My job is to help brands transition from Web 2 into Web 3. And I work alongside two companies at the moment, 3DM, which we have Mike joining us later, where I'm head of fashion and retail for 3D Objects, and then Cloud Art, which is a NFT minting platform for social media, social influencers. So we're basically we're creating meta creators and use social media platforms around the decentralization of data and content. So yeah, I've worked with brands like Sephora, Ferrari, Nike, and we're working on a variety of projects bringing these fashion retail brands into Web3.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you again for such an amazing overview again. So I'll be sort of taking you through, asking you folks a number of questions. I want to sort of preface the conversation by saying there are going to be folks who are listening in with varying degrees of experience in the space. So our topics are some might be a little bit more basic and some might be a bit more complex. And that's just for us as the conversation leaders, but also for folks at home. So I think to kick things off, I'd actually like to start with some basics. For the folks on the call here who are thinking to take a step into Web3, which quite frankly can be a bit daunting, I think we can all agree. But quite simply put, Paula, I would love to ask you, where would you begin if you were as a brand just approaching the space and you've absorbed some news and you've seen some headlines and you heard some amazing stats? Where does one begin?
Well, that's a great question. Well, actually, it's my students who actually refine the whole Web 2, Web 3. So we would see in fashion retail, the Web 3 space is basically a 3D virtual shopping experience. So the way I would say, particularly at 3D, and when we work with brands that are transitioning from Web 2 into Web 3, particularly in terms of, so you take like a 2D e-commerce website, and then you create a 3D virtual store. So that would be kind of the best way in where you transition from Web 2 to 2.5 into Web 3. So when I talk about Web3, you've got Web3 protocols, and they're like DAOs and NFTs and Metaverses. And then you have other kind of Web3 concepts, which are more like Web 2.5. So what I say to brands is, firstly, you need to create 3D assets and prepare your website for 3D, so for virtual stores. And what I mean by virtual stores, I don't mean VR and headsets and all that kind of thing. What I mean is you're using your web browser to interact with a website that has 3D objects. And these 3D objects give customers an opportunity to co-create certain kinds of products online. So yeah, Web 2, 2.5 for brands, I would say first thing you guys need to do is create your 3D assets. So taking your 2D assets, converting them into 3D and creating a virtual store.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paul. I think that leads quite naturally into Mike, a question for you. I guess your business is centered on that assumption as well, right? That there's some things that we can do now in Web 2 or 2.5, if you will, that can act as connective tissue to Web 3. Would you agree with that statement, mate?
I couldn't agree more. So we're actually more of a 2.5 advocate rather than 3.0. The reason being is that most of the brands and the agencies, let's face it, their core revenue comes from their e-commerce shops. So first of all, you want to make sure that that revenue is being captured and you have that secured for the next five years. Then once the brands start to get their hands dirty with 3D, because it's a living display object, right? It's not your standard JPEG or video. Those things, they have their own lighting environment, their own behavior. You can swirl them around. So once the brands understand the techniques of 3D, how different commerce solutions like configurators, 3D and AR product explorers can elevate and trigger specific consumer behaviors, then it allows them to gather this data to then take them and test them on avatars as well. But in order to be able to do that, you need to, as Paula mentioned, you need to start understanding the whole notion of 3D and how it works and how different commerce solutions can enhance different experiences along omnichannel and digital.
Yeah, understood. Mike, I think that's quite clear. Paul, I actually have a favor to ask you before I continue. Would you mind putting yourself on mute if I'm not directly asking you questions? Would that be okay? Yeah? I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I wanted to move the questions on to Tim, actually, because I think, we're talking about practically diving into a space where, I think we're making some assumptions about the organization itself and the degree of readiness and self-awareness it takes to plunge into a new space. So I think I'd imagine at Volkswagen you had an experience of moving the business, or rather being a part of the journey of the business, focusing on Web3. And I guess my question is, what do you think some of the key things are to take into account as a business, as an organization, in terms of readiness before taking that plunge?
Yeah, a very good question. I think before a brand enters this space, it is very important that you know what you're tapping into there, because I see a lot of brands that are doing, for example, NFT launches, just like you did a marketing campaign in the past. You go in there, you sell something or you show something for a few weeks, and then you're out again. And this happens, and this is working for several parts of NFTs quite well. And this can also work for virtual events quite well. But I think before you go in there, in general, you have to dig into the rabbit hole, as people say. You have to be aware of what is happening in this space, because it is a different space. The people that you will have as customers there of your NFT or of your experience will be a lot different on what you had in the past. Like looking at NFTs, for example, in the past you would say you have fans that you are speaking to, but now basically if you're selling an NFT to some people, you have kind of a small shareholder who is believing in your brand and who is trusting your brand as well. And this makes it more complex for big brands. So if you're tapping into this field and if you are a big brand, also be aware to do it right, to have a roadmap which is working, to have everything in place to speak to the communities, how the communities are working in this place. Because the risk of doing something wrong is also big. And my suggestion would be do a test and learn. Tap into the space, maybe with some good partners that have a proven record of how that they know how to do some things in there. Test and learn. That's what we did as well. The good thing in our group is that we have several brands who tapped into different kind of fields. We have, for example, the brand Porsche, who did an NFT launch back in August, which helped now all the other brands that we have in the group to learn from that and to take a bigger step forward. So yeah, step into the rabbit hole, learn a lot about the space, and be sure that it is different, and do test and learn, but be aware of what you're doing because you are a brand that also has something to lose.
Yeah, I think that's sound advice, Tim. Thank you so much for that. Stefania, I think some of the examples that we have just mentioned in conversation now have centered on fashion. And I think, for me personally, I could see, sort of in the 3D space, I could see how the idea of Web3 can feel quite tangible in the context of fashion. But I guess my question to you is, do you think that the space is relevant for some brands and some verticals more so than others? What would your point of view be on that?
Right. So I think a blockchain obviously is offering opportunity not just to the fashion industry that started in art. So art is actually the industry that has been leading the way before, and then fashion came in. Now, there are some elements where you can see the value that blockchain can bring to fashion more clearly. Mm-hmm. And I have been in the fashion industry for a long time. I was a model when I was very young, and then I kept my relationship with brands and done some influencing work while I was, doing my career in financial market. But going back to blockchain, so what is very interesting is that fashion is a very old industry that has always been kind of like very difficult to disrupt it with something innovative. And people in fashion, they are not really super techy, but now it's becoming mainstream. So you see that actually surprisingly, crypto, Web3, they're all coming down to fashion. Now, obviously there is the element about how I'm going to engage with my customers in a way that is going to be more inclusive. The challenge that brands face is actually carry on and kind of like reinvent themselves. So I think the engaging with the community, particularly after COVID, where all the business from the store has moved online, then you are basically in a virtual world where now we can call it already like a metaverse. When you go online, you buy stuff. It's not, it's a very early stage, but you are basically shopping online. So they have to do that. How they do that? How do they engage with this community that shop more online? So they have to kind of reinvent different kind of experience. On the other side, and here, coming back to this point, there is an element of gaming, new generation that is more into this kind of stuff. They have to take in consideration. But I think the other main element is about how the... Sorry.
Hi, this is Ella from the Arts Club. How are you?
Sorry, I think that there was just a call that came through.
No problem. They're going to be a bit disappointed.
So, sorry. It's just, so now I'm a member of the Arts Club. Right. So the point that I wanted to make is that blockchain it can be very valuable for the secondary market. And that was the point where I wanted to come, because fashion now, secondhand fashion is becoming more and more mainstream. More people, because of the element of sustainability, they want to shop, secondhand stuff, and how you make sure that basically the product is authentic, is verified. And I think this is where actually blockchain can help a lot. It's not really connected to NFT, but I think is a very important use case, which I'm sure that we are going to discuss more later on, where blockchain can actually help fashion, but I would say I will broaden it up to the luxury market, because it's also luxury cars, is luxury drinks, is jewelry. There is a lot there, but is obviously fashion is one of them.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Stefania. I think that's a really good way to open the aperture a little bit about the possibilities in the space. You mentioned as in the automotive industry, and I guess we've got Tim here. I'd love to hear, Tim. How are some of the projects that you're busy with at Volkswagen? How is Web3 manifesting itself in a very practical sense? I'm curious to ask you the question as well.
Well, I think it is a journey, as it was said earlier. I mean, at the moment, we're seeing, as I said, a lot of test and learn. People are starting to explore this space, and we're seeing a lot of movement, a lot of development happening. Like, for example, if you look back 1 year, NFTs were more or less perceived as digital images and as piece of arts that are basically connected to the blockchain, which is still there, still will be there. But then other players came into the market, like the Bored Apes and the CryptoPunks and so on, and told us, or basically showed us, what can happen with a smart contract. And what utility can mean if you connect this to a smart contract. And what then an NFT can become. It can become a community, it can become a key, it can become basically a one-on-one relationship with your brand. And these are things that are still developing a lot. I think there's certain areas that we look upon that are getting a bit clearer at the moment, which are more interesting to us. And certainly there's also the possibility to connect this closer to a product, like you said, in fashion, or like you said, in automotive as well. Life cycles and development life cycles need a bit of time, especially, for example, in the automotive industry. But I'm certain that things will show up in the next month or years that we cannot even imagine at the moment.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And isn't that what's exciting about the space in general, right? I have a question for you, Paula and Mike, actually. If you would humor me with this one. Could you give us a view of the current state of the metaverse? Paula, you mentioned there's a difference between concepts and so on, and more sort of pragmatic things. But just for the sake of argument, a current state of the metaverse and where you see things going. So, for example, will there be multiple metaverses, or will there be connective tissue between entities like Decentraland and Roblox in the future? I'm curious to know what your views are, and I suppose you also work very closely with Mike, and I direct the question towards you as well, Mike.
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. That's quite interesting, actually, because I was having a conversation with some of my colleagues, and we realized metaverses aren't a destination. We're actually using metaverse tools to create these 3D virtual experiences. Because if you think of it historically or quite recently, metaverses are Decentraland, and some metaverses are centralized, some are decentralized, some have tokens, some don't have tokens, some are VR, some are AR. So it really depends on the industry and how mature the brand is in terms of which metaverse they want to use. So yes, there will be, and there are, multiple metaverse in terms of their destination. And these destinations may be marketed by certain segments. So you might have a luxury metaverse, or mass market, or fashion, or retail, lifestyle, entertainment, media, whatever it is. But regardless of a metaverse as a destination, I don't see that. What I see is metaversal tools that are used by brands to build their own metaverses, or their own, like a metaverse doesn't have to be a platform. It's a selection of tools that are used to create these 3D virtual experiences that encourage co-creation and customization. And then going back to, what you guys were talking about earlier about NFTs, and historically, where we use NFTs in the fashion supply chain. Historically, we use it for provenance, ownership, and authenticity. But what we're using NFTs now are for customer engagement, co-creation, loyalty, and we have the seamless integration of online technology and in-store environments. So looking at these customer touch points or the customer journeys and fortifying them with different types of technology, these technologies are pre-metaversal. So that's kind of where I see it. And I suppose Mike can go on to talk about the objects and where 3D kind of sits in bringing these brands and transitioning these brands and hand-holding these brands, from Web 2 into Web 2.5.
Amazing. And I guess to that, before you jump in, Mike, just a question to continue that train of thought, if you don't mind, Paula. Would you say then that what's actually critical is that there are means by which you can connect these 3D virtual experiences that might otherwise be isolated instances? Would you say that then that takes on a higher level of importance in the future, or what would your view be to that?
Well, yes, there's a variety of tools, right? So in our Metaverse toolkit, so AR, VR, then we have, some of these, technologies of Web3 protocols. So it's really about augmenting, it's not replacing the retail experience. It's augmenting an existing retail experience to get that consumer interaction and that long-term relationships with our consumers. So, Mike can go on to talk about, AR wearables and 3D objects that are intelligent, that cross the internet, taking back customer insights. Guys, it's kind of like, when we talk to brands like Burberry or Fendi and we create their 3D objects, those objects travel the internet, right, and the customer is interacting with those objects and giving the brands this real-time data about the product and about its market insights. So that's the true value of these 3D objects, is the ability to understand what the customer wants, when they want, and how they want it. And that's why metaversal tools like AR and 3D wearables and that kind of thing are the future for meta e-commerce or meta retail.
Amazing. Appreciate that, Paula. And onto the point of the objects and that part of the technology, Mike, I'd be curious to know where you see things today and where you see things tomorrow. Oh, sorry, you're on mute, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I accidentally put it on mute. So the most important thing we need to define here today is that Metaverse can be anything we want it to be. And we always have all these brands and agencies and individual creators coming to us to Metaverse this and Metaverse that, and they don't really understand what they're talking about. So my own way of breaking this down into layman language for the brands is that basically Metaverse is the era where humans place equal ownership on digital goods as they do on physical goods. So it's not those, butterfly, unicorn, cloudy worlds that you go in and you dance and you fly. It's just the era where consumers shift their consumer behaviors, and they're readily available to start spending $1, $100, $10,000 to own something digitally, knowing that ownership can unlock different levels of rewards and accessibility for them. So the whole notion of what we try to educate the brands is that Web3 is just a new internet where anyone has the chance to be rewarded, anyone has the chance to create something, anyone has the chance to be whoever they want to be. We experience the social media of the existing internet and how people are perceiving them and how they're building digital identities around that and how they're, relating themselves with different product placements. And basically, the metaverse worlds such as Sandbox, Decentraland, OVR, Digital Village, Horizon, and what have you, all those act as new means of social media channels that these new metaverse behaviors are going to be more and more, amplified from consumers. So always think of these metaverse worlds, and I keep saying metaverse worlds, not metaverse, as social commerce, as new social commerce channels where people are going to be interacting with brands in different ways. We're going to be seeing new KPIs such as play to earn, wear to earn, sweat to earn. We're going to be seeing a completely different way in how brands identify influencers and ambassadors, not as to how they look, but how many people they have following their avatars around, what kind of creativity and contributions they do in the space so that people follow them because of their their contribution, and not because they have beautiful faces, or they've got slim bodies, or they've got a lot of money to spend and show off. So it's a whole new era where we just give the chance for anybody from a consumer-facing role to have a voice, to be able to engage with the brands and contribute to the building of the brands.
Amazing.
So this is basically what we all need to understand. And NFTs in the metaverse doesn't necessarily have to go together. NFTs, as Tim very nicely laid it down, they are the form of a CRM for the brand, a form of a utility. That is the key to unlock your relationship or enhance the relationship of a customer with the brand. And that is what the brands need to understand. NFTs are the utility, and the metaverse worlds are just the means to the end, an additional way to provide rewards and stronger sense of ownership for their customers, whilst they're trying to blend the physical with the digital experiences. Now, any brand that does not understand that does not understand where this is going, they're going to be losing market share starting from now. Every minute from now that we talk, a new baby is born, and a new baby is going to grow up, and the first thing that they're going to interact with is a device. It's a mobile, it's Roblox, it's Fortnite, it's all these kind of different means where they interact between them in gamified worlds. And they're going to start purchasing and interacting within those worlds. So once they become in a critical age where they have the purchasing power, they are already going to be acquainted and much more sophisticated buyers in this kind of notion of meta commerce, where physical and digital ownership is being blurred. And if brands don't know how to communicate that with them, then they lost them. So they're bound to have a very short-lived life. When it comes to metaverse worlds, whether the existing ones are going to prevail or a new one is going to prevail, nobody knows. Even me, if I tell you something, it's going to be massively speculated, and 99% is probably going to be wrong. It's like the early days of social media, where we had MySpace and we had I don't even remember the names of them, coming to life, and people were so excited about them. But then you had Facebook coming in and owning everybody. So probably there might be a metaverse world that is going to prevail and it's going to have massive volume versus everybody else. Probably is not invented yet, but as Paula quite rightly said, there are going to be some microverses from the brands or from big retailers or from more specific metaverse worlds that they can be more specialized, and then different users, based on their appetite, based on their excitement, they choose how they want to navigate. Interoperability is very hard, because a lot of these metaverse worlds are very centrally decentralized. So all of them want to have their own kind of 3D requirements to dress or sell your product. They all have their own tokens. Unless there's going to be a token that interoperates everything, then we're not going to be able to have this notion of I take one asset in the same way across everywhere. Yeah. But one asset can unlock me different or same kind of experiences everywhere.
Got it.
This is the notion it's going to be following up. And what we try to do with the brands is the whole thing of a wrapping mechanism. So let's say if you're Fendi and you want to start dancing along and bridging the gap between direct to consumers and direct to avatars. Yep. Once a consumer goes and buys, let's say, a Fendi peekaboo bag from their online shop, they will also receive the token or the NFT of that peekaboo bag that then allows them, whenever they go to the different worlds, to be able to claim it and use it in that form and in that way in that metaverse world that they are in. And they can unlock different rewards from that world. This is how basically interoperability is going to shift.
Yeah, I think the idea.
I hope I didn't confuse you.
No. I think it was a great foundational. So, like I said, a part of this conversation is very much foundation, but we'll get to the speculation and the dreaming shortly. I promise you. I'm very curious to know what you're all excited about. For Stefania,
and I just like to add there. When you're talking about, I just say it's a sales tool or a distribution channel. Metaverses, for people who don't know that much about Web3 and Web3 protocols, I just say, the metaverse is an additional virtual sales distribution channel for brands. So that's how I would simplify it without all the the Web3 protocol stuff. So I just wanted to add that there. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's also a good summary, I have to say, because I mean, first of all, we have to get away from the idea everything that we do now in the real world needs to take place exactly the same way in the virtual world, and this is the metaverse. No, that's not the case. It will open new windows, and I think I would speak for brands here as well, is we need to make sure that we are a relevant brand in a virtual space or in a digital space. And most of the brands that we are speaking about today are very good and very solid brands in the real world. And there will be metaverses opening up, either our own or either from someone else. But we need to make sure that we have our products ready for this digital world in a digital manner maybe, and that we are a relevant brand within this space as well, maybe doing other things.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tim. I actually had another question, perhaps for Stefania, but also to the broader group, because I think we're getting into a free flow. Stefania, for you, we were talking a lot about like the NFTs and the metaverse, the concepts that we tend to see a lot of. But I'm curious to ask the question, how more on the foundation and what's happening underneath these technologies that's allowing for this decentralized Web 3.0, namely the blockchain and digital currencies. The question is, how important are those? And again, this is a very foundation setting question again, but how important are those technologies for the development of Web 3? And could you give us your 2 cents on that?
So, I mean, obviously blockchain is part of Web3, and it's just one part, like is VR, like is IR, is all new technology. They create these those virtual world. Coming back to the question before, I don't think there's going to be one winning all. Like there isn't one network that is winning everything, even though Ethereum is kind of driving at the moment. The challenge of interoperability that Mike mentioned is crucial, because at the moment, when I'm speaking to brand, they said to me, I'm going to launch on Ethereum or Polygon, or they are thinking, right, what is the place where I'm going to get more interaction, where I follow the money? So it's kind of like, that is kind of the point where now all the brand, all the project they are working with brand, they are building on Ethereum or Polygon. And that's the place that it is at the moment. I'm hoping to see differentiation because, for instance, of energy consumption, sustainability are kind of topics that in fashion are very important. So maybe we are going to see a shift towards blockchain. They are going to be more environmentally friendly, or they use a different kind of consensus mechanism that consume less energy. Now, an important element that I want to make here, because many people, they don't have technical understanding. They think an NFT is a picture or is a wearable. An NFT is not. So what I think, the education, what is an NFT, is not a virtual picture. The NFT is a key, is a set of keys that unlock a specific assets that is on a blockchain. So the asset doesn't move from the blockchain. It's just the key that you have them, or you pass them to somebody, or you sell them. So I think this kind of element, the NFT are building blocks of the metaverse, let's call it like that. But it's very important that brands, first of all, they understand some level of technicality they need in order to power as well education to their customers, because education in the industry is very important. And if there is education, then you can build on there, you can build the utility, new different kind of utilities. But if you're just trying to test without really understanding, which many brands are doing, it is not really like a sustainable plan. And I think the team will agree on that, because we were mentioning before, being very cautious on the approach you take, because you want to be in the space, but you don't want to rush into, because some brand, they've been there for years, they've got a reputation. You don't want to be seen like the one that is making the full steps just because you want to be the first one.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, Stefania. Really, really, really nice summary. I got a bit of a lighthearted question for you all. Is there an NFT out there that you're really salivating for that you've looked at and you're like, maybe one day I'll have that one? Just a random question for you all.
The Volkswagen NFTs.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I want one as well.
Ferrari NFTs.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Launch new cars. Yeah.
I appreciated that both of you are in the cars. That's a good sign for a group as we are with a lot of car brands.
Yeah, we are hoping for a pre-minting.
Awesome. I think we spoke very briefly about sort of approaching with caution. But beyond sort of like the more strategic caution, which is more inward looking, making sure that you're resonating in a place that's entirely a novelty, I'm curious to know more in terms of the landscape itself. What kind of regulations, and this is a question from the audience, regulations, privacy, and security, what cautionary tales could you tell about Web3 and that might be useful or pragmatic for a brand to know? And I asked that question to all of you at this point.
Do you guys want to go ahead?
Go ahead, Mike, first. Yeah.
Okay. So, two use cases which we've seen lately, especially after we organized the Metaverse Fashion Week and we collected a lot of feedback and user-generated content. So we've seen how people interact with brands now through their physical channels into the Metaverse and from the Metaverse outside back into the real world. Mm-hmm. There are two things that we've seen from both sides: the consumer-facing behavior that wars the customers, and what the brands are being afraid of. Mm-hmm. From the brand side of things, there are two major things, and team may be in a better position to answer that. But what we've seen a lot is that they're massively scared about the, all the financial pitfalls that a brand has to address when it comes to blockchain and cryptocurrency and stuff like that. And also the fact that taxation is not massively addressed within this whole metaverse ecosystem. Mm-hmm. That really makes life hard for the brands to be able to synthesize robust commercial strategies yet. And this allows them to spend a lot of money on tax consultations, but also they're afraid that their public image might be not damaged, but have some sort of an impact if somebody if they do something in the metaverse, and people might consider that they haven't touched base on all the financial check boxes. Yeah. From a consumer-facing thing, what they're very much afraid is that, okay, I'm interacting with this brand in the metaverse. I understand that if I purchase their NFT or if I purchase a digital product from them, it's going to do things for me. But how am I going to ensure that there's going to be longevity between my relationship with the brand? Or how do I ensure that this token somehow gives me that utility in real life? And they have this kind of lack of confidence that the brands are ready to keep sustaining and feeding this relationship in perpetuity, basically. These are the two elements that we see from each side.
Understood. Well, I want to sort of appreciate that, Mike. I want to sort of say we got 10 minutes left, and I think in those last 10 minutes, I'd like to ask each of you the same question, which is, what are you most excited about in the space, in your own words? And Paula, I'd love to start with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, great question. Social entrepreneurship, circularity, and innovation. So I've been teaching e-commerce actually for 20 years, lecturing e-commerce. And I remember my students saying to me last week, "Oh, who's going to buy an NFT?" I remember thinking 20 years ago, I had students asking me, "Who's going to buy a luxury handbag using a credit card on the internet?" And that was 2003. So for me, I like the idea of data-driven decision-making. I like real live supply chains, creating products and services that we actually want in real time. So I think Web3 protocols like DAOs, NFTs, and Metaverses are going to give fashion brands the opportunity to create products and services that have a circularity focus and that have this kind of real-time action. So it'd be kind of like, Zara would present the new collection to its stakeholders, and then its stakeholders would vote which products are made on that supply chain in real time. So for me, I think the fashion industry and the fashion supply chain and the fact that we're becoming stakeholders in these brands, that's what really excites me, because I've seen a lot of crappy fashion products being made and then they end up in the ground. But if I had this opportunity, if I'm a customer and I have an opportunity to become a stakeholder in a brand where I get a say on what kind of products and services they make, then that's awesome. So that's why I'm feeling very excited about Web3 and Web3 protocols for the fashion supply chain.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Paula. Stefania, would love to ask you the same question. What are you excited about for what's to come? Oh, sorry, Stefania, I think you're on mute. Stephanie.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
You mean generally in crypto, or you want to focus on fashion?
Honestly, I'm asking you personally as someone who is incredibly active in the space.
Yeah.
Can be fashion, can be crypto, but I'm just generally asking the broader question, what are you excited about in the space more broadly?
Okay, so what I think I'm excited that is going to happen is going to be about avatar and digital identities. And this is kind of like a blurred area that at the moment we are still, you see DeFi is trying to kind of expand to institution. There is a problem of KYC and all things around that. So I think the element of digital identity is going to be very important, especially because there are, the problem about fake identity, fake account. There is big things on social media. We don't want this to happen as well in the metaverse. Now, what I'm excited in the metaverse, because the metaverse is now already here and the DAO is going to be soon integrated mainstream, is actually a different way to look at influencers. And that's something that will always been frustrating me. And Mike touched that slightly before. But, if I love a brand and this brand is bringing, is kind of like getting those influencers, they are, for instance, models, or they are, people they choose to represent the brand. Maybe I don't like the choice they make, and I don't want those people to kind of be influencer for a brand, where I think it should be the community to become more involved as as part of the influencer movement. So I think the influencer that we know that goes on Instagram and is paid by the brand, they get freebies when part of the community is actually has to pay for the item. I think this is going to change. So the influencer on Instagram and TikTok, we are not going to see them anymore, but we actually see more like program where the brand is incentivizing the community to benefit from the activity they contribute to the brand. So that's something exciting. And then obviously the rest all about crypto, that I want to see more interoperability. I want to see the space to grow. And we are seeing is getting, is now to the institution that wasn't like that just 2 years ago. So we are moving towards more like mainstream, and very soon we will be able also to have a stable coin as part of payments for brand, which is very important because allows payment to be faster, and there is no problem about like the exchange of currency. Think about how much stablecoin can add to international trade. And I think that's something very exciting as well that I would like to see, and it will benefit any brand.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the creator economy piece is super important for us, also on the agency side and how we work with folks. But I think to your points on the crypto, on the currency and the progression there, I hope the Biden announcement is a great signal for the stability that's to come in that space, and I think it's very much needed. So Stefania, I appreciate that as well. Tim, I'd like to ask you the same question, my friend.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
Well, I'll answer it from a maybe different angle, because
Sure.
I fully agree, and I couldn't agree more on what you guys said. But what in general fascinates me and why I love this job at the moment is really the community. And that also, that really means the Web3 community. There's this saying of WAGMI, which stands for we are all going to make it. And I can really see this happening because, I mean, not everyone, but 99% of the people that you're speaking to are very, very honest and very, very open. I'm speaking to a lot of other category brands about what are your issues, how are you solving this problem, because and that's not happening a lot in marketing, is that you're in the same boat. We are all in a ship where we don't know where it's sailing, and we don't know exactly how everything is working, and we're helping each other and saying, hey, maybe you can do this, and you need to do this, and then this works. And this is a very good spirit, which is maybe an entrepreneurial spirit, which is maybe just at the beginning, but my hope is that it's going to last. And this is something that I really love. What I love about the technology is that it is unleashing some creativity in marketing and in communication that we haven't had in a lot of years. Social media, Web 2.0 was very cool, very interesting, unleashed a lot of things. But now we have something where we can basically add any utility. You can do so much with this. And that leads me to the third and last point, which is you're able to get closer to your customer. You can get brands and customer really on a one-on-one. And this, for me, is the number one strength. You have a real relationship. You have a basis with a fan or with a future customer. You have a sales channel with this customer where you can send them things for free, where you can but also get money transferred from them. It's solving so many things that marketers had wished for in the past. If this technology is really getting so mainstream as we're hoping for, it will get brands and customers much more closer, and that gets me excited as a marketing person.
I think that's brilliant, Tim. Mike, I've got a 30-second window for you. Can you give me something, a parting thought, and then I'll sort of wrap us up because I'm getting a red light flashing over here. So, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to be super fast. But as Tim said, there's a tremendous community being built in Web3, almost like a cartel, but like all these players are working together, each with their own specialization, and they're really building the provenance and the legacy that we're going to leave to everybody else to come and build on top of that. And that is what keeps everyone so excited. And anyone you speak into this space, they barely sleep these days because they just can't sleep. You go to bed and you just think of all these other things that you can be building. What 3D is focusing a lot is this notion of connected commerce or meta commerce. So what we are going to be spending a lot of time investing in the next couple of months and quarters is through this distribution interoperability kind of thing as to how we can allow the brands to take their assets, create them once, sell them thrice across physical, digital, and the metaverse, and allow them to have consistent experiences basically as they narrow the bridge between direct to avatars and direct to consumers.
Amazing. Mike, thank you so much. And all of you, I want to thank you. It was great having you joining our panel. I learned a tremendous amount. I hope you all at home did as well. Next up, we'll have our panel with Jonathan. But before that, we'll actually have a short break. That's right. The next few minutes, you can explore our desktop, check out our Dept apparel fashion brand. This will also be a moment to connect to others on the chat. Grab a tea, grab a coffee, grab a soda, grab a water, whatever you need.
Metaverse beer.
Or that. It's Easter weekend, right? So enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you so much. I hope you did get a refill and are ready to rock and roll for the next 45 minutes. We've actually got a clip to show you before we get started, so let's maybe start with that.
Last year, we saw a surge in interest in Web3, pioneering into Metaverse, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFT technologies, which provide unprecedented levels of transparency and democratization. This means exciting ways to interact with audiences. It's a way for traditional brands to connect with newer generations and establish long-term relationships on a personal level. Brands are at a crossroads in the coming year, deciding whether to pursue these exciting digital spaces, possessions, ownership, and the reinvention of how we interact, and monetary systems. It will be difficult to comprehend everything that these technologies have to offer. Entering this new decentralized world will undoubtedly reveal who is falling behind and who is poised to take the lead during this exciting evolution into Web3.
Incredible. I hope you enjoyed that short clip. Quite frankly, the space is moving so fast, I'm going to have to bring in some muscle to help me with this panel. Jonathan, are you there, mate?
Hi, Tobias.
Amazing, amazing. Jonathan, it's incredible to have you here. Appreciate your time. Honestly, have fun with the panel. So over to you, buddy.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the next panel, which is Web3, the hype, tech, and what's beyond. I'm Jonathan Whiteside, and I'm the Global SVP for Technology and Engineering at Dept. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So during the next 40 minutes, I'll be asking some questions to the panel who are leaders in blockchain, NFT, Metaverse, and pay-to-earn gaming, to discuss some of these topics, what the hype is and what they are, and they are experts in the field, so they're seeing and living all these things every day. Now, a word of warning. While a lot of my colleagues at Dept are also really into Web3 topics and they work with clients every single day on some of these areas, I personally am quite new to the space. So it's not going to be a deep dive into the underlying technologies. I'm really just hoping to understand more, debunk some of the preconceptions I might have about the space, and really learn what the real opportunities and challenges are today. So we'll also be opening the floor up to some of your questions. So if you do have any questions for the panel, then please add them into the chat and we'll get round to answering them towards the end of the session, the last 10 minutes or so. So hi, everyone on the panel. Really glad you could make it today. As a start, I'd really like you to just briefly introduce yourself, who you are and what you do. So to get us started, Barry, can you get us started?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. And thanks, Jonathan. And thanks to the Dept team for including myself and Algorand in general to this panel. So my name is Barry Finkelstein. I head up business development in North America for Algorand Inc. We're a layer one blockchain technology company. My background has nothing to do in the technology field other than a great interest that's grown over the years. I was a 35-year Wall Street veteran, spending the majority of my career running different global trading, distribution, and structuring desks at the likes of Merrill Lynch for nearly 20 years and UBS thereafter for roughly 12 and a half years. I came to blockchain quite innocently through clients that I had known who had suggested that my knowledge and background would fit well with the type of technology that Algorand was developing, and it turned out they were right. So that's how I ended up here, and somehow now I understand what the word metaverse means. So that's all very exciting. So I'll pass it on to my other colleagues here.
Perfect. Lavinia, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Well, first of all, so happy to be here. Thank you, Debt Agency, for inviting me. So a little bit about me. I run the UK's leading diversity blockchain community and educational platform. What's distinctive about my community is that, yes, we're women-led, women-focused, but we are all about human beings, so all genders are invited. As I've discussed in many panels and within many talks, I saw that there wasn't a seat at the table for me, so I decided to create a table. And in doing so, my objective, my mission is to bring more gender diversity into the space. And by just doing that, more diversity, full stop. So yeah, that's what I do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Marco, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Jonathan. Great to be here today. Hi, listeners. So my name is Mark van den Heuvel. I'm from the Netherlands, and I am the co-founder and CEO at Merit Circle. Merit Circle is a gaming DAO, so we basically do anything gaming into the Web3 area, from investments to incubation to basically facilitating products and services to gamers as well. And myself, I'm a huge community person. So yeah, a DAO stands for a decentralized autonomous organization, which is very Web3 focused and new to probably many of you. But yeah, very happy to be here today and looking forward to the panel.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Gillian.
Hi, yes, very happy to be here today also, in good company. My name is Gillian Gossel. I'm based in Ireland, and I am a journalist, broadcaster, and author. Prior to blockchain, Web3, it was a wonderful world. I had a bit of a hiatus in my life, and I ended up a bit of activism, a bit of divorce, a bit of recession, a bit of home repossession, bailiffs, and all this kind of mess, and changed the law. And then I ran in the 2014 European parliamentary election as an independent against the banks and for the little man. So when I eventually met blockchain, it was a bit late, about 2017, I went, oh, this is amazing. So I jumped in with both feet, and I've been very happily swimming around the Web3 waters ever since. I write for Cointelegraph, Coindesk, and I also have my own platform, blockleaders.io, in which I do a lot of lead founder interviews, which is my great privilege and joy to have the opportunity to interview and speak with some of the amazing people in this space.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to start off with the first topic or first question. I'm going to start with an NFT question. I promise you that the rest of the talk isn't just about NFTs, but just as an entry point to get us started. So many people believe that NFTs are here to stay, but maybe not in the form that we see them now, or we've seen them in the past 18 months, 24 months. We've also seen the NFT market cool down a little bit over the past few months compared to the hype that we had probably 12 months ago now. So my first question is, are creators starting to change their strategy or experiment with NFTs in new ways, opposed to what the big headlines that we saw this time last year? And Gillian, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, NFTs are definitely going to stay. If you think about it, it's just a way of uniquely identifying a digital object. So it's quite simple in some ways, where just took a while for us to figure out how on the internet we could actually have unique digital items. And I think the important thing is they will change, they will mutate, they will go up and down and all around the houses because they're so new and they're so exciting. But the biggest thing for me about NFTs is that it connects, for me, it connects creator with the fans. And that for me is one of the biggest points, because before we know that the middlemen, the Web 2, sucked up all the goodness, if you like, from the interaction between the artist and the creator and the fan, and took most of the money out as well. And this is a way for creators to interact directly with their fans, monetize it, give new experiences, new engagements. And that to me is very powerful. And I've just come back from the NFC conference in Lisbon last week, and it was buzzing. There were so many creators. Actually, at the very start, one of the co-organizers, an artist called Carlos, and I can't remember his surname, sorry. He's from Mexico. He got into NFTs 2 years ago, and he was saying, I now make my living through NFTs. And that is just so exciting, because I think before the big problem was, if you were a creative, an artist, you had to be really, really good to make your living from it. Because I always complain, like, how could you be an ordinary accountant, nothing against account, or an ordinary shopkeeper, and still feed your family doing what you do? Why can't you be an artist and do that? So I think we're coming to a way of using Web3 and NFTs to actually allow that to happen. So it'll be different, it'll be changed, it'll be crazy. But for me, the most powerful is the connection between creator and fan.
Brilliant. Lavinia, do you agree with that? What you're seeing in the community that you organise?
Well, for me, just talking from a diversity point of view, I think that NFTs are a great pathway for many women to come in. Last month for International Women's Day, we hosted the first ever NFT party. And so what we did was just get a group of people, again, it was a mixture of genders, together, and we went through the minting process. So it wasn't just a case of talking about what an NFT is, why it's important, how it's going to make a change. We actually took them through, here's your wallet, put Matic in it, here's the NFT, purchase it. And we did it as a collective. And it was very powerful, because when you think about this space, one of the key things that underpins it is community and collectivity. You know, that sharing of a mindset of wanting to make a difference and utilize and leverage this space to create equity for as many people as possible, and different types of people, not just the same people on Wall Street, so to speak. So to answer your question, in agreement with what Gillian said, everything is going to evolve. I mean, it's still nascent. We're at the beginning. And I think we need to stop thinking of NFTs as like, this is what an NFT is, and there's no sort of flexibility. Ultimately, an NFT, as Gillian touched upon, is a digital asset, a crypto digital asset, and it can be a collectible, it can be a piece of art, it can be something that represents a ticket, for example, to an event. You know, that is what it is. And so to limit yourself to say this is what an NFT is, or limit your understanding to what an NFT is, you're limiting your creativity and your ability to leverage this marketplace in this new paradigm shift.
Brilliant. Barry, we were talking the other day, and you were pretty passionate about, we're just scratching the surface in terms of blockchain technology, in terms of opportunities for using this for licensing, for marketing, for creative expression. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Lavinia was starting to go down that same path, and I think it's the right way to think about it. And you almost have to take 2 steps back in order to go 3 steps forward, which ties into what Jillian was saying as well. An NFT, people need to understand, is not a postage stamp cartoon of some form of simian with a funny hat on and a colorful cloak and gas blowing out of some proverbial orifice, and it changes, and because of that, it's more unique than the other one. That is a form of NFT, granted, and there's a world in which that is valuable to people, and I'm not here to say whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. By that same token, you can NFTize something as simple as the first tweet that was ever done by Jack Dorsey, and that was originally worth $2.7 or $2.9 million. It most recently traded at $277. So buyer beware. Of course, it doesn't mean that Beeple's isn't going to be worth 150 million the next time that trades. I can't judge that. That's for the market to determine, and it will determine it like everything else. But the key point here, and what you're alluding to, Jonathan, is the fact that NFTs 18 months ago, people wouldn't if you gave them the N and the F, they wouldn't have gotten the T part of it. No one knew what they were. Now, SportsCenter knows what they are. CNBC knows what they are. My father, who's 94 years old, knows what it is, or at least they've heard of it. But what does that really mean? Well, it means it's in the nomenclature of society today. And large corporations, enterprises, athletes, actors, actresses, songwriters, musicians, they're all realizing, to Lavinia's point, this is a way to connect with your fan base, with your customer base, with your client base directly in a way that heretofore hasn't been doable. And what is happening is, rather than just looking at it as, oh, geez, I'm pick your favorite company, let's just use Nike, and I've got a pair of Michael Jordan shoes, and I can go and make that a collectible and sell it. That's wonderful, and that's a wonderful use of an NFT, because you can create authenticity around it and validate it. That's great, but you can do something much greater with an NFT, and you can use it as a form of branding, licensing, and marketing to create an experiential event for your client base that creates a stickiness to that client base. And so it is becoming so much more powerful than meets the eye of the common publication, if you will, that's out there. And that's what's so exciting about it. And so then if you'll humor me for 30 more seconds here, it's also far beyond just what most people know of collectibles and even these types of items that we're talking about to connect people to branding and licensing. NFTs are super important because of that validation and the authentication that's created through blockchain technology. And when you do that, you can take any asset, literally any asset, and uniquely identify it, to steal a word that Jillian used earlier. What does that mean? Well, all of a sudden you can NFT any asset, including real estate, securities, contracts. And so you look at projects like a Lofty AI that has now, it's basically taken real estate and single home ownership, tokenize it, created NFTs, fractionalize them, and democratize the ownership of single family housing across the United States and across the globe, for that matter. I mean, that's a massively powerful tool of how blockchain is being used in a way that hasn't been done before. And again, just to give a little credence to Lavinia, and I promise I'll stop my spiel here, but I am very passionate about it. One of the things that I love about blockchain in general is blockchain is blind. It doesn't know your color. It doesn't know your sex. It doesn't know your creed. It doesn't care about your sexual orientation. It just cares about the product that you're putting forth there. If it's usable, it's viable, if it's real, if it's secure, and if it's ultimately something that's wanted by the community. It doesn't care who's behind it, absent it being used for poor purposes by the wrong type of people. And so that's one of the beautiful things about this whole technology. And, I'm very supportive of what you're doing, Lavinia, and I think it's wonderful. So that was my little soliloquy. I apologize.
Thanks. No, thanks, Barry. It's very, very, very interesting. Marco, have you got anything to add here before we move on to the next question?
Well, I think honestly, most have already been said just now, but I think for myself, I'm more on the actual decentralized part of NFTs. And so, you were just talking about brands and about companies and monetization. And I really like that. I mean, I see it's a huge opportunity. But what I also see is, and I think Jillian or Lavinia mentioned this, is true community ownership. And I like to think about even IPs being in hands of the owners of the NFTs, where, yeah, sometimes you can think of characters where, hey, suddenly you have the IP of the character and you're free to use however you want to use it in whichever way. So you can create products, cartoons, movies, whatever you want around them. And so when I think about big brands coming to the space, I mean, I hope to see a little bit of decentralization there too, and IP sharing. That would be amazing. But honestly, I think that will start with just mainly the crypto native community. But we're seeing that. And other than that, I think Barry, it had good points there, and has pretty much said anything I would have wanted to add.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to keep with you, Marco, for a second,
sure.
Because I want to dive a little bit deeper into the kind of decentralized topic. So an area that interests me quite a lot, but I'm not 100% clued up on, is DAOs themselves, particularly which are decentralized autonomous organizations. And certainly how they can be used for good within pay-to-earn gaming, especially things like treasury management. I think my initial perception was this is a way that people could enrich themselves, but also I'm seeing examples where through that decentralized organization, the groups are deciding to kind of use the funds or use what the assets are creating or whatever to do good for society as well. So I wanted to talk a bit about more. Perhaps can you just introduce the concept to me and the rest of the audience, and perhaps a good couple of examples of how decentralized organizations or DAOs can be used in different ways?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I talk about merit, I mean, I always like to explain this as an exploited hobby. Like I said, I'm a youth community person, and I started to do or join the play-to-earn gaming industry by first breeding characters, so creating more gaming characters in a game called Axie Infinity. And you needed 3 characters to be able to play that game, just to summarize it. Shortly after I joined, I noticed, all right, this game is not really for me, but I liked the breeding aspect and selling it for a profit. But shortly afterwards, I noticed that, hey, through NFTs, through the blockchain, it's possible to rent out these characters to people from all over the world and let them play with it and earn rewards with it, basically. And so one of the good things that I liked about that part is that you saw a lot of people from lower wage countries join and really grab this opportunity to be able to play these games that had, an entry barrier of needing to buy these characters, which they couldn't, play the games, earn rewards, where part of it would go to us as kind of the NFT distributor, and part of it goes to them. And what I really liked about that in the beginning, and what motivated me to make this bigger, is that I saw really directly where the money was going to, because they would share, hey, I bought a fridge, or I did a down payment on my car, things like that. So that's just one example of player shared economies in gaming where a DAO could contribute. But if you look at it further too, when Merit rebranded into Merit Circle and we were a DAO, the community immediately started creating mandates. So we had investment mandates, we had de-risking mandates. But the interesting part there too is that now, for example, we have a community member that wants to create a game, but needs, he needs funds, needs certain expertise. And so he created a proposal on a forum that a community can vote for to allocate budgets towards his development of the game. And so we're seeing a lot of new things that even I hadn't thought of our project would be doing, that we're now doing. And these are just examples, but there's many to name. But it's really just a community that runs with it and helps to build products, invests in it, and gives advice into different aspects of the metaverse, basically.
Julian, I know you mentioned it to me as well the other day. So what are your thoughts on this and the opportunities to kind of do good as well?
Oh, I just love the space. And it's interesting. I've been doing some interviews in the space, like the play to earn, which is where people play and they show up and they do stuff and they earn tokens and they can cash them out. And obviously, as Marco said, Axie Infinity's, notwithstanding its recent hack, it did a huge job in the Philippines during lockdown when people it wasn't a welfare state, people had no job. Now, the only problem with it a slight bit is that not a slight problem, but it's very new. It's getting very new. So a lot of the play to earn games are kind of like what they call grinding, which is in regular video gaming, where you have to kill X number of monsters to get to the next level. So it's a grinding stuff, whatever. So it hasn't got quite the same enjoyment, I think. I wouldn't like to be grinding away in Axie Infinities all day to earn my income, put it that way. Right. Having said it, obviously it's fulfilled a need. So it will grow, but interesting. And another game that's very big out there, I think it's actually bigger in terms of users, is Alien Worlds on the Wax blockchain. And they are also play to earn. But there's two things about the alien worlds which is interesting. The first off is that to earn is quite strategic. And when I was hearing about how to actually play the game, I'm going, they should teach this to kids in school. This will make maths come alive and economics come alive, because it was hurting my head. It was very complex, and you have to really get a handle on to earn properly. But then secondly, there's 6 planets in this game. I mean, it's just a game, but there are a lot of people on it. And the 6 planets, they're going to go into governance mode soon, and they're going to go into have elections, and each planet will have a DAO. And a DAO, as you know, is a group of community with a purse attached. But the purses attached are huge. There'll be millions of dollars. This is not just, you know, like, oh, there's a few pence here. There's millions of dollars in these treasuries, and they'll be run as DAOs. And the whole point of Alien Worlds is the DAO. And what they want to do is when it comes in, it'll do 2 things. They can have like worker proposals, so that people will say, oh, I want to develop the game, I want to develop the planet, I want to something inside the game, whatever. And that's cool, and people will vote in it, and it's all very egalitarian in that sense, that whatever the planet governance holders want to do. But they can also go outside their world, and if they wanted to help in Ukraine, for example, or in a disaster and send money out, they can do that too. So it's just a way, it's like the lines are being blurred in this modern world. We're a game, we're play to earn, we're DAOs, we have massive treasuries, and then these people are doing huge things. And I mean, it's also new, even to flip to a different topic, like the DAO, Constitution DAO, that was very high profile. Now, I kind of fell apart afterwards because I hadn't really figured out what they wanted to do, and the gas fees obliterated a lot of the deposits, so it wasn't ideal. But in a spark, imagine how much did they raise? Millions. And they almost bought the Constitution of the United States. So we haven't, as you said, Marco, you're doing stuff you didn't even know you were going to be doing, because you're pushed on by this DAO. My mind boggles. I have a sore brain at the end of the day with the innovations and the thinking, and oh, you could do that, or you could do that. So I don't know, the world's your oyster. If you want to do something, go and join a DAO and do it, or set up your own DAO and do it.
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to move on to a next topic, which is probably the number one question we get from our clients and people in general when we're discussing blockchain-based technology, and it's sustainability. And I guess the question is, Barry, I'm going to aim it at you first, if that's okay, is kind of, are they mutually exclusive, blockchain technology and sustainability? And what are your thoughts on this? I know that Algorand is very active in sustainability and building a sustainable blockchain. So turn it over to you first.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jonathan. And it's funny, sustainability, like a couple of other words that have become part of the lexicon of blockchain, like interoperability and cross-chain, or you have to decide how you're going to define that word. So I'm going to say there's 2 different ways to define sustainability. There's sustainability as you want to think about it in the world of ESG and doing what's right for the environment and sort of social conscience. And there's sustainability when you think about it is the technology that's being created for whatever the coinage or token that you're creating, is that actually a sustainable project, period, in and of itself? I'm going to assume we're talking about the first, not the latter, because the latter, I'm just going to make a blanket statement, which is all these things that are out there will not all be out there. I don't know if it's 3 days from now, 3 months from now, or 3 years from now, but the likelihood is that they won't all be there. There will be consolidation around things that are actually sustainable at some level from a continuation perspective. With respect to sustainability as it relates to things that are ESG focused and all, Algorand's ridiculously sensitive to it. We run ourselves not only carbon neutral, but carbon negative for that matter. When Silvio developed the technology underneath it, he specifically made sure that it was done so that it was not only secure and cheap and decentralized, but it needed, amongst all other things, to not only be scalable, but to be energy efficient. And that is a massive problem that blockchain has suffered with since its early inception. And that happens with many things. You know, the first computers were the size of the Eiffel Tower, and now you can do it on your finger, right? A computer can do the same work. So it's not surprising that there's this kind of evolution. What's really interesting is that because blockchain is so focused on it, that all the projects, not just Algorand, are really sensitive to it. And the people that are investing in these types of technologies want to see this take place. And that's what's really exciting about it, because it starts to move beyond just the blockchain technologists. It's moving to the people, whether it's in gaming, whether it's in high finance, whether it's in supply chain, they all want to take a proactive stance. And the fact that blockchain can help them do that is just a betterment to the whole society. So, I mean, I think you're not only penny wise, but you're overly pounded, you're tonnage foolish if you don't think that this is a major issue. I don't know if other people and people listening are aware, but most massive asset managers at this point have an allocation to sustainability investing. Now, that may seem like not a very important thing to some people, but it's a massively important thing, especially when you consider that in the next 5 or so years, there may be 100% dedication to investing in sustainability type of projects that meet certain criteria. That means all the massive capital and money in the world will only put itself behind projects that meet certain criteria. That's what makes this so vital and so important, why blockchain is going to be so important going forward.
Brilliant. Lavinia, I see you nodding a lot during those answers. So have you got anything to add here?
Yeah, I think I loved what Barry said about the because depending on how you define sustainability is generally the camp that you will be in. I do think that the media have tried and continues to try to demonize blockchain, and rather than focus on the ways that it is helping, how it is adding to the SG conversation and also the SDG conversation, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, Social Development Goals, sorry. And in doing that, yes, there are some issues. It's technology. And yes, it has an impact on the world that we live in. But there are brighter minds than myself and probably all of us here together who are working on creating solutions to those issues.
Yep.
Because no one wants to create a technology that's going to dissolve the earth in the next 5 to 10 years or even 20 years. We have to have sustainability in order to create innovation. And of course, this is why it's very important to have diverse people coming into the space with different skill sets and different mindsets. What do I mean by that? For example, I have people in my community, they do not care about how much money they can make with an NFT. They're more interested in, the diversity element, but not just diversity in gender, but diversity on how are we using this technology for good, blockchain for good.
Yep.
And similar to Barry, this is what really excited me when I came into this space, looking at how blockchain is being used to create sustainable solutions to old age problems, be it financial equity, be it gender equity,
Yep.
And like I said, we don't have enough time to go into the different case studies. But if one wanted to delve down this rabbit hole, then I suggest that they look at the UN 17 SDGs and Google it in relation to blockchain. And you will see a number of companies and protocols like Algorand who are creating solutions or using their grant money to help others whose mission has become that in their lives to create solutions for sustainability and for good in the world.
Brilliant. So this is all an education for me, so that's really, really good to hear. I want to skip across. Oh, Julian, have you got something to add?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to.
Yeah, no, go for it.
What Barry and Lavinia done have projected forward the good that comes from blockchain, which is just amazing. But I want to take a step backwards, just funnily enough, and say that with all the pinpointing of the Bitcoin and the mining and how energy expensive it is, but if you compare ordinary fiat money and how those systems run, they're much more expensive in energy than Bitcoins. It's just to stop and just figure this out. And then secondly, the other point I want to say is that Bitcoin miners, I know proof of work is very energy intensive. We know, there's lots of proof of stake and there's all the stuff coming through and there's graphs and all the rest of it. But Bitcoin miners have also, because the cost of the energy is very important to their profits. So unlike a hospital, for example, Bitcoin miners are always looking for the cheapest forms of energy available. So they're pushing renewables. They're getting energy that's been like those gas flares that are lost. So they've been had a very important role in pushing renewables and looking for cheaper, greener energy. And finally, Michael Saylor said it very strongly from MicroStrategies. What cost to get the vulnerable people, the disenfranchised people in the world, access to credit and to money? What cost? So I think those, although I think the important thing that Barry and Lavinia said, going forward, blockchain advocates and developers and visionaries, they're looking for solutions going forward, and that's huge. Yeah. But I was just sort of stepping backwards and going, it's just to bear that in mind, and at what cost to include people into the credit system.
So Jillian, I think you're 100% right. But the one thing I would just caveat that with is one of the things that blockchain intends to be is, democratizing for everyone, not just for users of it, but for developers of it too. So if you want to be a developer on a proof of work system, you're going to need to have some pretty deep pockets or be part of a group that has some pretty deep pockets. Whereas if you want to run a node like on Algorand, it literally costs virtually nothing. The power you need to do that can happen on a Raspberry Pi, which is less powerful than your cell phone. So that's where I think you have to be very sensitive to that. And while you're right, it may be cheaper to.
I was doing historic more, but I think, right, going forward, you're absolutely 100% right. Going forward, the innovation is coming at speed and on steroids.
Yeah, I personally believe, and I think Algorand would speak to this, we want to see everyone having the capability of using this technology going forward. And it's a very select group of people that can be part of a proof of work system, because it requires such, whether you're going to use solar power to run it or wind power or anything else, it's going to take a lot of capital to do it. Whereas if you want to run a node on not just Algorand, but you can name 10 other layer one, alts, you can do it a lot less than the power that it needs to run this. So somebody,
well, I 100% in that.
Timbuktu can do it.
I'm totally with you on that one. Innovation going forward.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Metaverse, because I did say we were going to talk about that. So there might be people in the audience who are interested. So I'm only going to go into one point. And when people hear the term Metaverse, they start to think, and certainly I used to think about VR first. That's the first thing that pops into people's heads. But we've also seen, I've also read arguments that Metaverse already exists today previously in video games, such as Grand Theft Auto Online. And there's also Meta's vision, Meta being formerly the parent organization of Facebook, whose vision seems to be more targeted at people doing everyday tasks in a virtual environment. So my question is the Metaverse 5 years away, 10 years away, or is it here today? And why is this topic of Metaverse so popular right now? And I'm going to turn this over to Marco first.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. I think, first of all, when you think about Metaverse, I also, similar to NFTs, think it's a very broad topic, and it's not just one definition to it. But when you ask me, is it here today, is it here in 5 years or in 10 years, I would say it's here already. But the way it is, it might be small compared to its potential, but it's going to be much bigger. And the reason why I think it's so popular is you see it in the news. It's a term you hear almost daily right now, also with Facebook rebrand, for example. But on the other hand, too, I think when you think about the COVID pandemic, it's really rapidly sped up the way that we are becoming digital. We work from home rather than in the office, and a lot of companies are continuing to work remotely. And I think because of that, initially when I thought about Metaverse, I thought about gaming, maybe a bit about VR, but certainly not about everyday tasks. Yeah. But now when I think about my day-to-day activities, it is in the Metaverse. I have meetings or panels like these, like right now, digitally on a daily basis. And there's going to be so many products and services out there that we right now cannot even think of, that are going to fulfill the enjoyment or everyday tasks that we do online. So yeah, I would say it's here already, and it's not just gaming, it is already everyday task. It's just going to become much bigger and much different than it is right now, maybe.
Perfect. Lavinia, what are your thoughts?
I so agree with Marco in the sense of it's already here. But like I said before, NFTs, blockchain, what we can do with it, it's still so nascent. We're still at the beginning. And this is why it's so important. So many different types. Anyone who's listening to this, don't ever think that there isn't a space for you. It's up to you to create that space because nothing is set in stone. And I can't imagine the blockchain ever being set in stone, to be quite honest with you. I think there is an opportunity here for anyone and everyone. And I think what Barry and Gillian were talking about in regards to Raspberry Pi and, the sort of entry to barrier is so much lower than traditional forms of entry in Web.1, Web.3. So in regards to the metaverse, it's nascent. We're still at the beginning. Yes, you have to get used to the idea of using VR equipment. But who would have thought that we would, get so used and acquainted to our mobile phones, right? We adapt. And this is a key thing with human beings. We adapt. So be open to adapting, be open to the possibilities, explore the metaverse with an open mind. Because as Marco said, the pandemic has expedited that open-mindedness and the creativity and the technology that goes with it in regards to the metaverse. I think it's very exciting. It is very overwhelming. And this is why it's very important to join communities such as Dept or communities such as mine or whatever community is right for you so that you can learn in a collective way so that you don't feel alone, you don't feel so overwhelmed, you don't feel like this is not for me because it's for everyone.
Great. Gillian, over to you.
Yeah, very interesting. Have you heard of Liberland? It's a micronation on the banks of the Danube on the Croatian side. It's a piece of land left over from Yugoslavia, the breakup of the Yugoslavia Empire. And it celebrated its 7th anniversary yesterday. I'm the Irish delegate and the editor of the Liberland Press. So it's a real country. It had over 600,000 people applied for citizenship when it announced 7 years ago. But anyway, the point of my saying is that yesterday, at the 7th anniversary, I gave a small talk amongst other members of the people involved, including the president and the different ministers. And I did it in the metaverse. I was in the metaverse. And then afterwards, I went into I did the talk on Zoom, but it was displayed in the metaverse. And I went into the area afterwards. And I can tell you, my avatar is a very good dancer, much better than me. So that was my experience of the metaverse yesterday. And there's a picture, someone sent me a picture. It's so funny. There's me on the big screen with all the different avatars in there. And I'm going, and someone said, "Are you the mother of the metaverse?" I'm going, "I don't think so." I think it was scary with this big face coming in. So it's here. And answer your question, it's absolutely here.
Perfect. Right.
Jonathan, can I quickly just add one thing? Because I think it's really interesting. So I'm the oldest one on this call, probably by quite a few years, I'm going to guess.
No, me.
And you look much younger then.
I'm definitely not.
And so when I think metaverse and like most people, the first thing you go to is either VR or gaming. It's a natural. There's nothing wrong with that. It feels foreign to me. If I wasn't involved in blockchain and things that are associated with it, it would feel foreign to me. But exactly to the point that Marco is making, imagine yourself doing work, which we're all doing now remotely, and you snap on a VR set, and if you were in the world of real world architecture, not just metaverse architecture, and you could walk around inside the building as you're consulting with designers and so forth, or you're nowadays we all do shared whiteboards and so forth. Well, imagine a shared whiteboard, but you feel like you're in the room with somebody, so you can see the real world applications that come from it. And so the only thing that concerns me about the metaverse is that it doesn't take advantage of all the potential applications that it gets too late in it's gaming, because that's so pervasive right now and it's so obvious, right now, and that's agreed, and that's event now, and I want to see it not stay there. I want to see it just keep expanding and growing because it's so fascinating as to what it could ultimately be.
Don't you think that will happen with time? I mean, I am so not a gamer. I'm not interested in gaming, but I am interested in, say, meeting up with my girlfriends across the world and having a girls' night in a fancy restaurant in the metaverse, and having the food that I order online, or having that token that's given to me, then having that food delivered to me in my home, so I can say to my girlfriends in that moment, oh my God, my chicken is delicious, you know? Actually,
so I personally, I hope so. That's my point, is I want it to expand well beyond just the world of gaming, because I think it's so powerful. Although I do caveat it by saying it does concern me that it will interrupt the natural social interaction that people have with one another on a face-to-face, person-to-person, that we have to be careful of not to have that happen and create isolation for people. So I don't think that's healthy either.
Well, I think if you think about digital communities, I mean, would it be really isolation? I think, you spend a lot of time still alone. It is digital, but also when I think about the pandemic, I was at home a lot, so I didn't go out much, didn't see much of my friends. But I mean, I grew up as a gamer, so for me, it felt natural to be in this digital environment. But there are plenty of opportunities, and I think also just slightly go back to, for example, sustainability and the discussions around travel. I think travel might become for the rich again, or at least not so common anymore. So when I also think about exploring the world and maybe doing that digitally, you could still enable people to travel digitally and still learn or experience new things. So I think, like you said, Barry, there's so many opportunities and we're not seeing them all happen right now, but I do think that we're gonna go there. And we have to be wary of isolation and social interaction, also face to face. But I do think a large part of it is going to be digitally and hopefully multiplayer to call that. And
Perfect. Right, we've come to the end of our discussion, but we do have some questions from the audience. Unfortunately, we've only got time for one, because we've only got 2 minutes.
My fault.
We've talked a lot. No, it's all of our faults. So one question. I'm going to ask you to limit to about a 30-second response, if possible. Might not be possible. But the question is, what is the most unique NFT utility you have seen in marketplaces to date? And Marco, you're on my screen at the moment, so I'm going to ask you first.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think I can think of two things. I think one is that Lavinia mentioned earlier is just real world ticketing. I mean, I see NFT ticketing. You go to events and you get digital rewards maybe for going there, or at least, you can resell in a way that, hey, I am the owner of the ticket. Against fraud, scams. There's so many options there. And on top of that, I also think about interoperability for gaming, for example, where you can use one character of one game in another game that has nothing to do with the initial game. So just to tie it back to gaming and round it up.
Cool.
Perfect. Gillian?
I totally agree with Marco, that whole ticketing thing and being able to reward people after the event and all the rest for, it's fantastic. But I go back to, I just love the fact that creators can link up directly with their fan base. And the Kevin Kelly article from Wired in 2008, where he said you only need 1,000 fans that'll pay you $100 a year and you have an income. So I think it sort of makes that possible. And as a creator myself, I get very excited about that.
Brilliant. Lavinia?
For me, my background is coaching, entrepreneurship. So I love the idea of it is a gateway to a membership, and how it can, you can create exclusive events. It goes back to the ticketing events, but also, for example, if you are a coach, you could create an NFT, which then gives you add the utility of your coaching program behind that NFT. And then, of course, the NFT is a standalone. So if you, as owner, secondary owner, want to sell that NFT because, I don't know, it's a famous coach such as, I can't think of anyone, Robert Kiyosaki, for example, then you can potentially sell it on, and it would have some value within that community that you move in. So I like the idea of being able to add your services and products as a utility behind an NFT.
Brilliant. And Barry?
Mine's easy. It's the use of NFTs in the establishment of royalty rights. It's completely changed that world, and it's happened on two fronts. It's put the control back in the artist and the creator's hands, and it's also allowed, because of the technology, to track these things in a way that's far better than the PROs have been able to in the past. So they will take advantage of that, which is good. But more importantly, whether it's through STOI, which is the song that owns itself, or Opal, or any of these other entities, CI, the Italian music rights organization that created 4.2 million NFTs in 5 hours and gave so that all their artists' royalties will now belong to their artists. It's so powerful. It is changing the world that we know, and it's going to happen in all sorts of facets going forward. And it's, again, speaking to the whole DAO component, it's putting the hands back into the control of the community, or back into the control of the creators of the art, and I'm using the word art euphemistically here, on a personal level. And I think that's what's just so exciting.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Our time's up, unfortunately. We got one question done. Thank you so much. So before handing back to Tobias in the studio, I just want to thank each of you so much. We could have spoken for another hour easily. I only got through about half of my questions. Thanks so much. It was a brilliant discussion, and it was a great pleasure and very, very valuable, I think, to our audience. So thanks very much, and back over to Tobias.
Yeah,
right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Panelists, to mirror Jonathan's point, thank you again so much. But also to you, Jonathan, for leading such a brilliant discussion. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to, I'm sure I'll be chatting with you in the coming couple of days anyway, right? And I think, generally speaking, I think if you feel like I do, I think we probably need a couple of hours to digest all of that. I don't know if you feel the same way, Maeve.
I definitely do. I've learned so much already. Still have to process a couple of things. Was very new to the topic, but it's been really exciting. I've learned a lot. These 2 hours have flown by.
Really?
I can't believe, unfortunately, we're at the end of our event, but it's been really great to hear from all of our experts about Web3. And we would like to thank everyone.
Exactly. So to just continue that thought, thank you to all the crew here and the folks that have made this happen, to all our panelists and experts, to you, Maeve, and all of you, of course, you at home as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you had a brilliant time.
Definitely, and we're also hoping that you were able to take away some key learnings, so that your organization is ready for a year that will really, define our digital futures and decide our business success. So what we will also do is we'll send you a recording of today's Dept Talk right after the show. And if you want to stay tuned for updates, make sure to follow Dept Agency on social media. Also, don't forget to register for the Meta Festival on the 28th of June. The world's first 24 hours in the Metaverse event.
It's going to be a big one.
It's going to be a big one, so make sure that you're there. Thanks, everyone, and goodbye.
Take care.